Welcome to Perspectives with Asima Silva. On our 100th episode, we talked about the Palestine-Gaza issue where my cousin had gone and shared his experience volunteering at Nasser Hospital. On the 101st episode, I actually had my cousin join us on Zoom, and we had a conversation about the motivation, the inspiration, and the decision that he made to go volunteer in Gaza. Today, we're going to do another episode with him. We're going to continue the conversation, and we're going to get a little bit more in detail about his experience volunteering at Nasser Hospital. So thank you, Aziz. And you introduced yourself last time as Dr. Aziz-Ur Rahman, interventional radiologist, board certified, and you had applied to volunteer in Gaza, and out of 20-some physicians, you were one of the 6 that were selected. And some of the powerful thoughts that you left behind when we had this conversation was that it impressed on me was you wrote letters to your children before going because you did not know the outcome of if you would return safely or not. And that was, to be honest, very, very powerful for me. Knowing you as my cousin, as my little cousin, I must add, for you to have to do that. A point that I wanted to also emphasize that you made that made also an impression on me is it's July 4th coming around the corner, and fireworks reminded you of the bombs that you were hearing in Gaza. And I'm not a doctor, but to me that sounds a little bit of a PTSD. And I'm sure that you're probably know more about it than I do, and I hope you heal from that if there is any healing that can be done. And as a third point, what I took away from our conversation was the interest in education that all these people had, regardless of the genocide that is happening all around them. And that is absolutely amazing. So from moving on from that conversation, picking up from where we left off, can you share with us, a couple of stories of particular people you've encountered? Because I know you texted the family that you were trying to get to know the locals as much as you could, trying to get their stories or information, to connect with them, to understand some of their struggles and their thought process. Because from what I understand from through social media and the little and few Palestinians that I do know that live in this country, they seem to be a very, very strong and moral and very, very strict in the fact of they will not give up. They do not want to give up. And they will struggle and strive until they get what they want in terms of their land and their freedom and their security, with disregard to what maybe most of the other people who might have been in the same situation may have given up a long time ago. So I just really wanted to know what your experience was, because that's what I see on social media, and I want to know in your experience the people that you've encountered and if you felt the same way.
So, I'll share some stories, but I have to be a little bit careful with names, just because they're all very paranoid about sharing their names and their faces on videos, because the louder they are, the higher they are on a target list. It is what it is. Yeah. So, there was a doctor, let's just say Dr. Muhammad, and he was one of the biggest surgeons of his specialty in Gaza, and he is one of the biggest surgeons in Gaza right now in terms of his specialty. And I was talking to him, tell me your story. He was jailed for 1 year, and you asked him why, no charges, and then eventually he was just released after a year. And he's kind of telling me, you can tell through the trauma, he doesn't really want to talk about it, but I'm kind of trying to open that door up a little bit. And you realize the amount of physical and mental trauma they got in that 1 year of jail is affected his whole personality. He's very paranoid, but the perseverance that they still have despite having that experience is just unreal. So during his jail session, he was saying they only have 1 hour of water per day. So washing your hands, doing anything you need to do, cleaning yourself, you only have 1 hour. There's about 200 cellmates. It's very dirty. And the only thing that got him through that 1 year, it was the little Quran that he had memorized in his head. And it was interesting because they're not allowed to talk to each other. And the way they would secretly communicate with each other over the year was really interesting. He was describing it to me like we would know when the guards weren't there. And this guy is a surgeon, and so I'm meeting him in the operating room, and I'm just reflecting on his story of being in jail for a year for no reason, no charges. He was let go. It's all speculation. They say, "Oh, you were talking to the wrong person. We're going to arrest you and put you in jail." These are physicians. These are surgeons. These are highly educated people, and it goes against all humanity to put someone, a civilian, but a surgeon who's absolutely needed in jail like that. And that wasn't the only story. There's another ER physician who was a young ER physician. He was put in jail for 2 months, and he has a smile on his face. And that's the thing. Everyone has a smile on their face, and everyone, whether it's a medical student to the surgeon to everything in between. And you're just like, I don't understand. You went to jail for 2 months, and you're smiling like, And then as I got to know him a little bit more, I sat him down. I was like, Dr. H, like, how are you? And he's like, Alhamdulillah, like, praise be to God. They always say that. And I was like, no. Like, Dr. H, like, tell me, like, how are you actually feeling inside? And then you could just tell his face just changed. He's like, he's not used to these questions because, I mean, most people just come as physicians, do their work, go to sleep, do the rinse and repeat, right? But I really wanted to connect with these people. And I think that's one thing after the 2 weeks I realized that people really appreciate it. And that's my advice going forward for any physician who goes there, is in your free time, talk to these people. It's mentally draining and it's physically exhausting to do this, but it's worth it. It's worth every second. But you just realize, once you finally just realize, like, hey, this guy's actually asking me some real questions, and his defense kind of just wore down, you just realize how much trauma is there, and there's nothing you can do. And so you're just telling him, like, just talk to me, just let it out. I know everyone in Gaza has the same problem, so you don't talk to anyone, because who are you going to complain to? Your neighbor has the same problem, your best friend has the same problem, your family member has the same problem, so they don't talk to each other about their problems, because the person you're talking to has worse problems than you potentially, So, like, just giving them an outlet, I found was just invaluable. And I'll give you another story. It was a medical student. It's very sad. One day we're just at a table doing rounds, and she randomly interrupts, and she's like, how do you process what happens to the human body after death? And we're all kind of just like confused because her question was so out there. She's very young, and we kind of gave her like a vague answer based on what we know in Islam. And then she's like, oh, my uncle and his wife and like 2 generations of family members, so maybe you're talking like 20 people, just died in a drone strike like an hour ago. And I'm just like, what do I say? I've never encountered this situation. You're talking about 20 relatives dying in a drone strike like an hour ago. And she's in the middle of rounds. She's not crying. She doesn't have like a depressed face. It's just, how do you respond to that, right? And I just realized my job wasn't there to, talk people into happiness. It was just listen to their depression and listen to their trauma. And I tried to be a listener. It was hard to hear these stories. I mean, later I found out, like, one of the quotes that medical student said to me was, I haven't cried for months. My eyes don't produce tears anymore. It's everyone's clinically depressed, but they just have this smile on their face. They come into work, they do their best, they educate themselves. They don't get paid, by the way. A lot of these people don't get paid. It's almost a volunteer thing at this point. And they're just coming into work or the hospital to assist Gaza in the way they can, another story was another medical student. Again, I know you want me to share names, but
for their safety's sake, I understand.
For their safety, yeah. And I think they would appreciate that. Another medical student was telling me about his home, and so they started in a home. The war started, the genocide started, and then they got forced relocation. I mean, we have to understand what that actually means. That means you have about 30 seconds to a minute to pick up whatever the heck you want in a backpack and get out of your house. Okay, now that's one forced relocation. We're talking about the first medical student I just told you did 6 times. This medical student I'm talking about did 23 forced relocations. And by the way, like, let's say you did your first relocation, you have a tent, you have some tarp, you have some sticks, that's your tent. And every single time you move, now you have to take whatever belongings you can fit in a bag in a tent and move it. And when you go to the new location that the Israeli military basically forces you into, it gets smaller and smaller. Now you have to find a spot, right? You want to make sure you're not next to the one bathroom area, which is just complete nightmare, lack of sewage. And you just come to realize that we in the West can't understand what it means to forcefully be relocated 23 times, or have our 20 family members killed in a drone strike, which involves kids and infants, or just not being able to cry because we've cried it out and we have no more tears. I mean, these stories are just so incredibly sad, and I was just trying to listen to them because, like I said, they don't have the ability to talk to other friends and family about it.
Do they have hope?
They have hope that God loves them and God will give them what they deserve. Right now, the last 2 months has been exceptionally hard on them. And I will say some are slowly losing hope, but the majority of the people, they will say, Hasbi Allahu ni'mal wakil, which basically means we put all our trust in God, essentially, in a nutshell. And they truly believe that. I mean, they know the circumstances, and some people are just, they're just waiting to die. I mean, they're saying, if the drone strike hits me, then I'm done. And to them, that's an exit. Some people have hope in that they can't wait till a ceasefire so that they can get out of Gaza and give their kids a chance to see what the world is. Some of these kids haven't even seen, what a green tree looks like, because it's just everything's destroyed around them. And then most people are just living day to day. I mean, they are just trying to find flour. They're just trying to find clean drinking water. And they're just trying to make sure their kids survive. So it's not even about having hope. It's just like, let's just get through this day and we'll think about the next day,
But as a doctor with this many casualties and injuries, do you have enough medical supplies in the hospital to even help? How much percentage of people coming in?
Yeah, absolutely not. Actually, yesterday, Nasser Hospital officially announced that there's not enough gauze to do wound care dressing changes. And by the way, gauze was invented in Gaza, ironically enough, right? So I just thought that was so ironic. But the medical supplies is a very difficult situation. We tried to push for baby formula while we were there because we thought, if humanity is that silent and deaf and blind, at least baby formula would wake people up, right? So we went to the NICU, did a lot of video shoots of these malnutrition babies. Baby Hassan, you may have heard him on the news. This guy had terrible malnutrition and something called Kwashiorkor, which basically means the muscle is just gone. I mean, the body has eaten the muscle and it's just skin and bones. And we were really trying to push for formula to come in with the aid, but he actually died like 2 days after we reported on him. It was very sad. I mean, we met the mother, and she said even if aid came in, she wouldn't be able to afford it. So it's just really terrible. And on top of that, in the trauma center where we're in the ER and the trauma center, there's not enough oxygen tanks. There's not enough ventilators. There's not enough, basic medical supplies to deal with everyone. So we actually have a red unit and a black unit. So the red unit is everyone we're actually going to treat, and the black unit is like, hey, we don't have enough resources to actually keep this patient alive, so let him die in the black unit. Just telling his family that he's not going to make it. And that's just resource management, and it's terrible, and that would never happen in America, but it had to happen there. There was a point where there was 80 ICU patients, and the hospital only has 12 ICU beds. I mean, where do you get the ventilators? Where do you get the oxygen tanks? Where do you get the specialized ICU nursing, right? So you can just imagine it was a disaster in all aspects of the medical infrastructure.
In your eyes, having been there, is there hope that Gaza can rebuild?
These people are so resilient. I have no question that they will rebuild if given the opportunity. They are the most, creative people in what they were doing. Like they were making coffee out of chickpeas. Just the way they come up with technology out of nothing, and the way they were doing medical procedures out of nothing, I found really fascinating. And I told them, I was like, if medical journals can just come here and watch you guys practice medicine, we would have like articles coming out of Gaza left and right, because it was so novel, and they have nothing, so they're forced to produce ideas that no one has ever thought of, and it's truly amazing. And I have no doubt, the moment life is able to come back into Gaza, these guys are not going anywhere. I mean, they love their land, they love their people, and they're so tough. I mean, I'm just telling you, that smile on their face doesn't go away. It's constant, and yeah, there's a lot of pain behind that smile, but they'll still gonna give you that most beautiful smile that they have. And that's one thing I just still can't comprehend, because nowhere else in the world can this happen and people are still smiling.
What about the kids? I know I saw a lot of pictures with kids still smiling, still just wanting to be a kid, as you said, in some of our interactions over chat. And how many orphans are there? Because with all these drone strikes, I'm assuming there's parents that are either disabled, injured to the point where they cannot really provide for their children, because it's not an environment that any non-able-bodied person can provide easily. How many are orphans? How many actually have parents or adults that can actually look after them? And is there where older siblings that are 10, 12 years old looking after younger siblings, is that rampant? What's the situation? Because I know that there are certain cases. I'm just not sure if we all know how rampant it is, if it is.
So the kids are the most beautiful things about Gaza. They are just absolute angels. And we had some very sad stories of these children and some very happy stories of life-changing experiences, especially from doing an emergency procedure, and now the kid actually has a life. But just looking out the window, you see these kids playing with garbage, soccer, and in the red zone where it could be bombed any second. And you just see they're kids. They just want to play. They just want to have fun, and they still do. And that's so beautiful when you see that. We saw a little school in a tent, and there's about 60 kids, and they're singing a song. And I broke down after seeing that, because I was like, this is what they want to destroy. This is the beautiful future of Gaza right here, right? And as for orphans, the thing about Gaza is the families are huge. I mean, they're very tightly knit. And when we're talking about living in a tent, we're not talking about, the nuclear family living in a tent. We're talking about in-laws. We're talking about extended uncles and aunts. There's no privacy in these tents, by the way. We're talking about 20 to 30 people in a family living in a small tent, by the way. It's not like a luxurious tent by any means. And so, yeah, when family members die, everyone else is picking up the slack, and that's kind of expected at this point. There's no area for orphans. If two kids, brother and sister, or brother and brother, have no family, yeah, and we see that on the street. It's very sad. You just see this, 7-year-old holding his 4-year-old, hand, and it's just like, how are we allowing this to happen in the world? And we're in America, living in the West, and we have an infinite amount of fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, and that's our struggle. We're trying to figure out, oh man, I don't know, which tomato to get. And then you go to Gaza, and you see a 7 or 4-year-old trying to figure out how to get water for themselves. They have nowhere to go. And one of the most beautiful scenes, and I have to send you this picture, was a little girl, which reminded me of my daughter, probably 9 years old, holding her little sister's hand, who's probably about 5 years old. And that little sister has one leg, the other one's amputated, and has one arm, the other arm is amputated. And they're playing with a cat in the middle of the night. And it was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And it was so emotional, and it was just, I saw my two daughters, and I was like, that's what children are. They, no matter what circumstance they are in, they just want to play. They love animals, they love cats. And when I saw that, I took a picture, and I was like, I want to remember this forever.
You also had mentioned that it was almost like a factory line of people who died, funeral prayers, and the walk to the grave. Was that 24/7, or was there an actual factory line? I don't know what the word is, or some sort of process where people were taking turns and shifts, since it seemed like it was a continuous type of process and no one could take a break. Am I assuming correctly, or if you
Yeah, so it's too dangerous to bury the bodies at night. So it's basically sunrise to sunset that the morgue is open and people are able to bury their loved ones. So right after sunrise, you hear the wailing, you hear the crying, you hear the sobbing of the families coming into the morgue and identifying the bodies. There's always unidentified bodies, and they open up the zip bags and see the face, and they're like, okay, and then you start hearing the cries. There's actually a gazebo that they put unidentified bodies in, so the families can open up the zip bag and find out if it's their relative or not. But yeah, and then it is a constant assembly line of death and putting those bodies in the grave from sunrise to sunset. It's constant. I mean, every single time I looked outside our balcony area where doctors were stationed, always there was funeral prayers, and I did end up going to two of them, just out of just trying to be with the people, and it was very sad, and you just hear everyone crying, and and you just want to be with them. You just want to hold their hand. You want to tell them that I'm sorry, but that doesn't mean anything to them. They just want to live a normal life at this point. But yeah, the funeral process was just a constant stream. It's the family's responsibility to do the prayer, and then the next body comes, and that family does the prayer, and the next body comes, and then as they're doing the prayer, the previous body's being buried. So it's like this assembly line from sunrise to sunset, and we're talking about 100 to 200 people dying a day.
Yeah.
And
I'm assuming at American hospitals that's not normal, that number.
No, absolutely not. And the patients are not young patients and 14-year-old kids and 5-year-old kids, and that's not normal. And, when they open up the bag, you see the brains. It's not natural.
Would you say then they were targeted, in the sense of we've heard reports where children are targeted when they're trying to get whatever humanitarian aid, or they're playing, and they've been targeted because either they've been hit directly in the head or in a way where they were meant to be killed, not just injured. And I guess my follow-up question would that be is, I'm sure there are people in the audience thinking, did you come across any Hamas people who want to attack Israel, who may have the ideas of anti-Semitism that we all talk about, right? We hear in the Western media that Hamas is hiding in the hospitals and they're hiding behind children, and this is why that they get targeted. Did you experience any of that?
Okay, so let me answer your first questions first, and then we'll move on to the second question. So the first question, you asked about targeting in kids and whatnot. So there's three things I would mention here. First is the aid distribution points, where people are desperate for food and are going to these GHF sites for aid, which is an American Israeli aid site. And really what it is it's a trap. It's a mouse trap. They go there and they're desperate for food, and then the Israelis basically open fire, and we see the trauma 30 minutes later. And they're almost always headshots and critical mass shots, very accurate shots. And then the other kinds of injuries we were seeing are blast wounds. So a bomb destroys a neighborhood, and then all sorts of injuries that weren't targeting a kid, but obviously if you throw a bomb in a neighborhood, it's going to kill multiple people and injure multiple people. So we saw a lot of that. Burn injuries were pretty common. And then the third one is people living in the green zones in their tents, and then suddenly they experience some sort of a drone shooting at them. So we saw that a lot too. So yeah, so for example, Mawasi refugee camp is where 1/3 of the Gazans live right now, and oftentimes we would see these kids coming in from quadcopters shooting at them, and this is not just me making this up. We actually had an NBC interview. They were recording us in the trauma bay, and then suddenly this 14-year-old boy comes in. It was like perfect. God sent this boy just to show the world this is actually happening right before our eyes. We asked him, what were you doing? We were getting water in the camp. What happened? Some drone shot me. and we were afraid that he will have paralysis because he was having weakness. And we got the CAT scan, and luckily just missed his spine. So yeah, that's the kind of 3 types of injuries we were seeing. And then as for Hamas, I mean, we didn't see any fighters in the hospital. We were basically living in the hospital for 2 weeks straight. We know every aspect of it. There was no fighters in the hospital. There was no guns. We didn't see any guns. We hear the explosions and gunfight outside the hospital, maybe 200, 400 meters away. Absolutely. Majority of it was the Israeli bombs and tanks and machine gun fire and the Apaches and the drones. I don't know anything else though.
Well, I just wanted to make that clear because unfortunately, you know, we hear that in the Western media. We have 1 minute left for this show, so I'm going to ask you something and leave it a little bit of a lighter note. You said that, you know, you were there for two weeks and you tried to adhere to their diet, more of in a solidarity, more to understand and more to be empathetic and support them in their daily struggles. So when you came off the airplane, what was your first meal?
It actually wasn't even the airplane. We had to reconvene in Amman, Jordan, us 6 doctors, and we became best friends, and we have a WhatsApp group, and we communicate with each other now. We're like brothers, and at this point, you know, for 2 weeks we really bonded, but we all wanted Munsaf. So in Amman, we got this huge, ginormous plate of rice and lamb, and we had shared it together, and we felt guilty because we wanted the food. We wanted to give it to our friends we just made in Gaza, right? But they haven't had meat in 3 months, and that was our first meal, and we really appreciated it. We were really grateful. At the same time.
And before I let you go, we have a few seconds. What about your kids? What did they say when they saw you?
Oh, it was so beautiful. They came to the airport, they made signs, they were dressed up in their dresses, and my son, who's 5 months old, just stared at me like, "You look familiar, but I don't know who you are." And my daughters gave me this ginormous hug, and they wouldn't let go, and they were so happy I was home. It was beautiful.
Well, we are all happy, you know, when we found out that you were safely home. And if you don't mind, I'd like for you to come again on the show to share more perspectives, because I think there's a lot that we haven't touched upon. But I tried to touch upon in the last 2 shows as much as possible for our audience to get at least the idea of the bigger picture of your experience. Definitely wouldn't want to go a little bit deeper next time we have you on. But thank you so much for being brave and going to Gaza and not only representing yourself as much as you went just for yourself. I felt like you represented the family. So we really, really, speaking on behalf of the family, I think want to show our appreciation for what you did and really happy that you're back. And let me just finish up the show. And what I learned from this in my conversation with my cousin is kids are always going to be kids, and they should never be suffering from war crimes or political ideologies that are completely not involving them. It's just wrong. It's a test for our humanity, and this is something we all need to speak up and try to stop. So thank you again for joining me on Perspectives with Asima Silva.